Hello all. So after several aborted attempts, that's Duncan and I, we finally made it out to the Red Sands Forts. Now the Red Sands Forts are in the Thames estuary, really the gateway to the North Sea, where we started from Minster. Frost visible on the beach there, nice, and here are the masts of the wreck of the SS Richard Montgomery. We'll cover that a bit later in the video. Meanwhile, the destination is out in that direction. It was a bearing of 70 degrees from where we started. Sunny smile from Duncan. And it's a long walk from the cars over the mud flats, and the water was only a few inches deep for a start, so that was nice. One of the results of that was effectively we actually left 1 hour after we planned, which we paid for later with the tide turning against us. It's a cold day, so it's definitely a pogey day, and there's not many features along this way on this first leg. So here's the first point. It's a cardinal marker visible here highlighted, and that's about 1.8 miles from the start of the paddle. So considerations we're looking at when we do this was daylight, the tide times, crew availability, and of course the weather. This is midwinter in UK. All four of those stars need to align. So second highlighted patch, that's another marker. So about 3.6 miles in. So at this point, to the naked eye, we can actually see the forts on the horizon, though the action cameras can't pick it up, they're too wide an angle. It's clear at this point, the tide's now against us, our speed over ground had dropped to about 2 knots at times, so the last leg from here on to the forts was slow. So from the point of view of the camera, the 360 with the lower resolution, that's the first chance to see. I naively thought you might be able to read the watch there, but you can't. It's 6 miles in, so the highlighted section there shows the 6 mile point. And from Duncan's boat, clearly he has a chart, he's showing off, he's more grown up. And unfortunately, there's a blob right over the forts, but there they are, just behind that blob. Another wee regroup. Taken the chance to take out my higher resolution camera. So this is at 7 miles of the highlighted section there again. For reference, the forts sit at about 7.8 miles from the launch. The 4K camera gives a much better image of what's going on, and obviously it's not stabilised though, so you'll also get me wobbling a bit. So that's looking to the north across the shipping channel. Sweeping back, you can see the wind farm. And looking back at the land, that's the nearest land. It's about 5 miles from where we are now. And time, 2 hours and 18 minutes in for the 7 miles, so we're not going fast, and that is right down to the penalty we're paying for leaving a bit late, and we've got the tide against us. So last we regroup, get the better camera out again, much better shot. The windmills there, clearly visible on the right of the screen. And we're now coming in for that close approach on the forts. The view as you approach these, it's stunning, and it's also quite sad, I guess, the sorry state that they're in these days. You can see parts of the gangway hanging there, just corroded, dissolved. Not looking too flash now. So right on the left of the screen you can just see a red marker buoy, a channel marker, and that is in the highlighted section there, so it's right beside that channel marker for the forts. So again, aware that the 360 camera is not brilliant, I've got the higher resolution out. The dead ahead, just on the horizon there, that's the second set, which is the Shivering Sands Forts. From here it's nearly 4 miles further, so potentially you could combine all of these with a longer day and better tidal planning. You could actually go to both sets of these. On this particular day, there's no way we were going to do another 4 miles against the tide. That would be well short of fun. So we're coming up here looking at the options. There's very few options to actually stop. There's some sort of framework on that furthest right fort, which is presumably for docking bigger boats. We're not planning to board. It's forbidden to board these. And who knows what state they're in. I doubt it's very safe to be walking around. The remains of that gangway there to the left, dangling down. But I can see from here, someone's conveniently put a bit of rope around the leg on the furthest one, which is right ahead of me now. So at this point we're thinking we just want to pause a little bit, have a breather and enjoy being around the forts without having to fight the tide just to stay still. So we'll just ease up, grab this string, it looks secure. There's a bit of tide whistling through that gap there now, so it's not going to be a relaxing moment, but at least we're not having to paddle hard. So latched onto the short leash, Duncan rafts up, and that gives us the chance for a little breather and to grab a flapjack. Everyone deserves a flapjack. You can still see the tide whistling by there just to the left as it drags the rope. This is what we were fighting for the last hour of this trip. Made it slow going. So just while we dangle here on the end of a rope, have a little ponder what these were used for. It was protecting the heart of London from air raids coming up the Thames, I guess. Easiest way to navigate in the dark would be follow the river, I imagine. And these guys would be here to welcome you. So flapjack's done, we're backing off, leave our little rope. Duncan's broken off there to the left. Such an eerie view. Like War of the Worlds or Tripods or something. This must be the last view from The Thunder Child, if you know the play. Another chance to see the tide sweeping there right to left. On the plus side though, it's pushing us back to the van now. So I'm carrying with me today a couple of electronic flares from Odeo Flare. This is the Odeo Distress Flare Snapshot. So I'm grabbing a couple of photos for them. When the water's warmer, I do plan to do a proper review and some decent information about these, but at the moment it's midwinter, I haven't been out that much. Click. And so I haven't been able to do that yet, but it will come. So we're now just drifting downstream, partly to get our breath back and aiming to eat something a little bit more interesting than a flapjack. We hadn't eaten at this point since about 4 in the morning. It's a long drive from home to get here. You may be interested to know, under the dry suit I'm sporting the Lomo Therma Rash. Don't worry though, it's not contagious. That's actually a thermal rash vest with a fleecy lining, and it's mighty fine on a frosty morning like this. You'll have a quick glimpse of that at the end when I peel the dry suit off. Lucky you. So I've just taken out, this is now the Odeo Mark III flare. And as before with the distress flare, I will give you a proper review of both of these, a good close-up look, inside and out, how you can use them, how they perform. They're brilliant bits of kit and perfectly suited for the kayaking as opposed to carrying pyrotechnics around that are going to get wet and have a shelf life. You can also carry these on a flight for those more distant adventures. So from here it's literally a quick raft up. Last few photos. You've got to bear in mind there's nowhere really to stop, you can't get out. And at this point we're about 3 hours into this trip, we've still got a couple of hours to get back to the van. So there's not that much you can actually do at the forts other than enjoy the view. So we're now making progress on the way back. Much more relaxed pace with the wind behind us, the tide behind us. This is the channel looking to the north, so the big white ship there is in the main shipping channel in and out of London. At the end of this I'm going to leave a few comments on what I would do differently if I do this trip again, purely because it's hard to fit it all in during the video itself. So have a look at that, because if you're planning this trip you might find it interesting. And we pan round, probably around 4 miles at this point from the nearest land. So we were planning to go right up close to the SS Richard Montgomery, as close as you can get. It's in a cordoned off area between buoys. What we could see at this point was the tide was way higher, so the masts were nowhere near visible like we had seen from the beach. Plus, I'll admit, we were pretty tired. We'd probably had enough by then. So we're heading back, and at this point, coming back towards the beach, you can see it's packed with camper vans all along the beach. The focus of a Terminator, T1000. So rudders up, handbrake turn. And we're parking. So what's interesting about this SS Montgomery is it ran aground during the Second World War. It was carrying explosives. They took some off, but there's still something like 1,500 tons of explosives on that ship. But reading the information online, they estimate that if these explosives were to go off, they would create a mini tidal wave so close to the heart of London. So I completely get why it's cordoned off. There's a view here of how it sits on the floor, broken in the middle, and understandably surrounded by buoys and notices saying, "Keep out." So with that, let's have a look at the GPS track while I go through what I would do differently. This trip was mid-winter, meaning the timing was critical with the tide, the daylight, etc., and the weather was much less predictable. However, there's never enough weekends in a year, and it seemed sensible to get this one done while we can, because this summer we have big plans to travel all over the place and do much more interesting things than murky London. However, if this were done with more time, longer daylight hours, you could include the Shivering Sands, you could get out potentially to that wind farm. You could also add a second day where you can use the low tide to get to Dead Man's Island and potentially get as close as possible to the SS Montgomery. There are loads of options. Feel free to leave comments about your experiences if you do this trip, or any other ideas. And I'll leave you with an image of me in a therma rash.